Alafia family. Bendiciones. So, I wanted to talk to y'all about a Pataki. Um, for those who don't know, a Pataki is basically a story in Yoruba tradition, usually dealing with the Orisha, chronicling certain stories from them that can actually aid you in your life, you know, or give you lessons to learn from in life, right? So these are Pataki. And so basically, there's many different Pataki. Uh, a lot of these Pataki can even be associated with certain Odus of Ifa. And so I wanted to bring forth a Pataki for you guys so that you can use to really progress yourself forward in the world, things of that nature. And this is the Pataki of Orunmila and the three women that saved Orunmila, right? So let's get into the Pataki. So Olofin, he was at his castle and he was distraught at his palace. So basically, the reason that Olofin was distraught was because his daughter was sick. All right, and she was having a complicated pregnancy, and she also lost her husband, so it was just her. Now, before I continue the story, just remember different Patakis, there's different variations of the story because this is oral tradition, okay? So this is oral tradition that's passed down from generation to generation. So different tribes or different sectors of Yoruba people will have different variants of the story, but the theme is the same, right? So Olofin's daughter, she had a husband, she lost her husband, she's still carrying this child, she's pregnant. And basically, she was having a complicated pregnancy to the point that it was bringing her close to death. So Olofin basically was calling different Babalawos to come to his palace to do divination, to find out what can be done to save his daughter. As he's doing this, the Babalawos are coming. As they're coming, they're marking a bow for her, but she's not getting better. Okay? So Olofin becomes frustrated. And what does he do? He starts locking up the Babas. All right? So as they coming, he starts locking them up when they're not able to fix the problem. So Olofin sent the word out for Orunmila to come to the palace and see what he can do for his daughter. So Orunmila hears this, and Orunmila is like, wow, that's odd. Why does Olofin want me to come to the palace? You know what I'm saying? He's like, why does he want me to come? And so immediately, what Orunmila did was, he did divination, and he did an ebo for himself. This ebo consisted of 3 hens that he sacrificed and cooked. All right. So, on the way, what he did was he went to Olofin's, he started on the way to Olofin's place, right? And he had his sack, he had his sacrifices in there, and that's what it is. So as he started his trek, what took place was he ran into a woman. This woman's name was Aboru. Okay? And so he runs into Aboru, and with that said, he stops, he has a conversation with her, and as he's having a conversation with her, she says, hey, look at that plantain tree over there. And so Orunmila goes over there to look at, where she pointed, and he noticed a stump, and the stump had new growth that was growing from within the stump. So Orunmila says, wow, that's odd, and he took it to mean new birth. That's what he took that sign to mean, was new birth. And so when he came back to talk to the lady, he said, thank you for your conversation, your insights. Here's one of my hens. And so he gave her one of his hens. Now, Orunmila continues on. And as he continues, he runs into another woman, and her name is Aboye. And so he strikes up the conversation with Aboye, and Aboye tells him, hey, you're on your way to Olofin's? Be careful. He's locking people up. He's putting people away in jail, things like that. And he said, oh, wow, thanks for the heads up. And so he gives her another one of his hens, okay? And he continues on his journey. Now, when he gets to the third, he runs into a third woman. And this third woman's name was Abosise. And, he strikes up a conversation with her. And as he strikes up a conversation, she tells him, hey, word on the street basically is Olofin is looking for somebody to marry his daughter. And so Orunmila says, oh, wow, that's interesting. He takes that into consideration. And then the woman tells him, when you greet Olofin, greet him with the phrase, Aboru Aboye Abosise. Okay? So, Orunmila, of course, he's thankful, and he gives her his last hen. Right? So as he gives her his last hen, next thing you know, he continues on, and he gets to the palace. And so when he gets to the palace, he talks to Olofin, and Olofin asks him, hey, my daughter is sick. She's having a complicated pregnancy. What can you do? But first of all, before he greeted him, remember, Orunmila greeted him with the phrase, Aboru Aboye Abosise. And then from there, it went on, right? And so he tells him, man, look, my daughter, she's sick, she's pregnant. I need somebody that can help her. Can you help her? And Orunmila says, oh, she doesn't need an ebo. She's fine. The baby will be just fine. And then Orunmila says, I would like for you to free all of the Babalawos in the land. And also I would like to take your daughter's hand in marriage. Olofin looks and he's like, wow. Yeah, thank you, so much. I wasn't expecting that. And then Orunmila says, then Olofin says to Orunmila, from this day forth, people will greet you with the phrase, Aboru Aboye Abosise. All right. So that's the story. So what does this Pataki teach us is the question, right? Well, let's look at what the phrase Aboru Aboye Abosise means. It means, may the sacrifice be made, may the sacrifice be accepted, may the sacrifice bring blessings. That is what that means. And the word sacrifice can be interchanged with offering. Okay? So now let's break it down. What is the story teaching us? It's teaching us the importance of ebo in our everyday life. You see, sacrifice is the key to life. If you notice, Orunmila started his day with divination. And that divination led him to know what sacrifice was needed to get through. Now, there's different type of sacrifice. You have the divine per se sacrifice, where you are giving something to the divine, right? Of, whatever offering that may be to whatever entity that you're going to. But then you have the mundane sacrifice that happens every day. Every day that we wake up, we must be ready to sacrifice on our own behalf. And what is that? Sacrifice time, sacrifice energy. What are you going to spend that sacrifice on? You see, are you going to sacrifice that energy on things that bring no value? Are you going to sacrifice that time on people that will bring you problems, that will bring you drama, that will bring you strife? Where are you going to place that ebo? Because you're making ebo every day. What are you offering? What are you going to sacrifice today? Are you going to sacrifice your time to make money? Right? Because some days you may need to do that. Are you going to sacrifice your time for your family because your family needs you? Where are your sacrifices going today? You see? So, when we get into this aspect of understanding, the story with Orunmila and the 3 women that saved him, this is the depth, how far that we go with it, the importance of sacrifice. If Orunmila never would have made the sacrifice, he never would have gotten the insights that he got along the way to Olofin's palace. And what would have happened to Orunmila when he would have got there? Orunmila, the divine prophet. If he did not make that sacrifice, Orunmila would have been locked up like the rest of them. For those who don't know, Orunmila is the divine prophet. So Orunmila would have been locked up with the rest of the Babalawos. It's because of how he started the day with humility, understanding that you do not know what the day holds for you. And so we use things like divination, things like ebo, to give us clues into what the day may bring and how to handle that as it comes. You see, this is the importance of ebo, of divination. And like I said, ebo does not always have to be some offering to spirit. Ebo happens on a mundane level. You yourself sacrifice time, energy, all kind of things you sacrifice. Okay? So understand that there is a deeper meaning to ebo. And me as a practitioner, as a worker in Puerto Rican voodoo, as a devotee of Ifa, I understand this very well. When I work with my clients, oftentimes I will prescribe a sacrifice or offering on their behalf to, whatever spirit that can help them to come back into balance. And remember, sacrifice doesn't always mean an animal died or something. Sacrifice can be fruit. Sacrifice can be a cooked meal to a deity, to a loa, to an Orisha. Sacrifice is not always, putting blood on a pot because you killed the goat or something. That's not just that. Sacrifice is full circle. You see? So with that being said, that is something that I myself do as a practitioner. I prescribe sacrifice for people to get into alignment with certain aspects of nature, you see? And that's what that's about. And so, you know, just like Orunmila, that is how the day begins. You know, the day begins with thanks. The day begins with gratitude. The day begins with humility. And from there, you will be able to handle whatever life is to throw at you that day. You know, so with that being said, family, make sure y'all join the mentorship for more information, because in the mentorship, I usually get behind the scenes of videos like this with insights I don't talk about on YouTube, stuff like that. So yeah, make sure you guys are joining the mentorship. Make sure that you guys, you know, if you're needing insight, book a reading, things like that. And you guys stay blessed, stay elevated. I'm out here in nature right now. Is deers and all kind of stuff going on, but that's why you see me looking. But you know, make sure that y'all are staying in tune. And with that said, family, I love y'all. Asho.